Welcome everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Knauf, co-founder of technologycatalog.com. Today's webinar is about TIPCHECK, a high quality and standardized energy auditing tool for industrial facilities. It will be delivered by Romain Carayol, Specification Manager at Knauf Insulation. The webinar will last about 30 minutes. If you have any questions, you can type them in the Q&A box on the left-hand side. The webinar will be recorded and you will receive a link after the webinar, and feel free to share the link with your colleagues. I would now like to hand over to Romain. Romain, over to you.
Thank you. Good morning. With a better insulation, actually we could save in Europe plants up to 14 million tons in oil equivalent in energy and 40 million tons of CO2 equivalents every year. So it's huge. Those results were calculated and published by the EiiF in their study in 2021. And depending on the various sources, it means billions of euros and the equivalent of heating in 10 million households or 20 million cars, which is huge. But what is exactly the EiiF? EiiF stands for European Industrial Insulation Foundation, which is a foundation where the main stakeholders of the insulation business in Europe gather to propose a better use of insulants in the industry to save energy and reduce CO2 emissions. So it's a main player when it comes to elaborating and proposing new standards to the EU and to assess the potentials with accurate tools. Let's go back now to these potentials and how we can tackle them. In this table, you see the results of thermal calculations in accordance to the standard of calculation in Europe, which is the ISO 12241, and 2,500 audits that were performed by the EiiF TIPCHECK engineers. What we can see here, I will not read all the slides, but what we can see here is basically in 10% in the low temperature equipments is not insulated or badly insulated, which results in losses in as big as 1,000 watts per square meter. When it comes to middle temperature, it's 6% of the equipments and pipings that are not properly insulated. And when we look at high temperature processes, then it's 2% of the equipment and pipings that are badly insulated. And this leads to very big losses up to 10,000 watts per square meter. The warmer the medium, the bigger the losses. And I will take only two examples to show you what figures are at stake. First, let's take a basic insulated industrial valve in 150 degrees and 150 millimeters. So very basic valve operating all year long. If it was not insulated, it would lose 10,600 kilowatt hours. If it is standardly insulated, then the loss gets down to 600 kilowatt hours, which is so the difference, the savings you can do with this valve if it's insulated is 10,000 kilowatt hours. You just have to multiply this by the number of valves that are not properly insulated in your plants. It can be a huge potential. And what is very important is that the return on investment, if you insulate, is around 6 months, basically. Second example, I will take an oil storage tank in the petrochemical industry. with oil at 60 degrees, and only considering the roof. If it's not insulated, the loss is up to 252 watts per square meter. If it was basically insulated with 30 millimeter insulation, the loss would get down to 55 watts per square meter. The difference is divided by 5. And if you compare the cost of this insulation, which is around 400,000 euros, and the money you can save with proper insulation, then again, the return on investment is like 1 year and a half or 2 years maximum. And you can go further. You can even insulate more than this with 200 millimeters insulation and class A. And you can again divide by 5 and drop to 10 watts per square meter loss. You see that I have introduced insulation classes A and G. Let's see what are these insulation classes. First, we need to ask what is an optimal thickness for a good insulation. Economic aspects of industrial insulation are defined mainly by the energy price, the operational time, as well as the lifetime of the industrial plant. And to design an economical insulation system over the plant's lifetime, the economical or cost-effective insulation thickness needs to be calculated. On the same principle, we can calculate the ecological insulation thickness defined according to the German guideline VDI 4610, for example, as the insulation layer thickness for which the total embodied carbon in the insulation and the remaining CO2 emissions that you can save with the proper insulation would be as low as possible. And then after calculating this ecological optimum, you can set the insulation classes. For class A would be ecological to ecological plus 20% thickness. Class B would be 21% to 35% above ecological thickness, etc. So on till class G, which will be above the optimum plus 180%. All these ecological optimum and insulation classes can be used then to assess the insulation performance of the processes, plants, and up to country level. This is what you see in this table, which again was calculated by my friends in the EiiF, comparing the overall performance of technical insulation country by country. And you can see that not all are there, but you can have more detailed information on the EiiF website. I don't want to go too much into details, but having this kind of standard at European level would be a breakthrough, since it would allow every plant owner and every country to set individual targets for improvement and to plan all these improvements to tackle this insulation challenge. That's what we are pushing for with the EiiF. But you see that not all countries are as ambitious and as others, but all can improve. Why? Because most local regulations are non-binding, like guidelines. And second, because they are generally based on history when energy was cheap and easy to find. For the moment, the most important testing test is the 2011 Energy Efficiency Directive, which doesn't set a reduction target, and the joint declaration of the European member states in July 22, when they agreed to reduce their emission to 15%, but not saying how. It's very likely that the pressure will go harder and harder. So let's get prepared now and see how we can reduce CO2 emissions and energy consumption right now. So let's get to the tool I want to tell you about, which are the TIPCHECK audits. What are TIPCHECK audits and what are their targets? The first target would be to find the potential savings due to uninsulated equipment or piping, poorly insulated equipments, damaged insulation, and so on. And then to evaluate the losses due to that poor insulation and calculate the savings that you could do, that you could reach with a good insulation, and propose solutions according to the plant's targets and budgets. Then calculate paybacks and provide the support for decision making on insulation improvement, equipment by equipment, pipe by pipe, for the plant owner to be able to decide what they can do and how to plan these improvements. So we have a standardized methodology developed by the EiiF and which is compliant with the energy management systems like the ISO 50001 and the Energy Efficiency Directive Article 8, which are binding systems and binding rules. How does it work? First, you need to find TIPCHECK engineers, which are trained by the EiiF twice a year, and then certification is updated every year. Then you have a start meeting between the TIPCHECK engineers and the plant owners and energy managers to agree on the scope and targets of the audits. Then we need to prepare the data about the layout, process flow, dimensions, temperature, description of equipment, so that we can have a good idea of how it will go when we got on site. And then we go on site with the audit, and we can find the more detail on the dimensions, measure the surface temperature to be able to assess all the losses, scan equipments and pipings to detect all the damages in the insulation systems, leaks and thermal bridges. Generally, we partner with an installer for better assessment of the cost of the installation. And then coming back to the office begins the analysis works and solution proposals, cost estimation, and the writing of the report. The aim of all this is that at the end you have a very detailed report so that we can calculate all the actual losses and calculate very precisely the saving potentials and the return on investment or paybacks. The idea in the end, the target is that the plant owner have all the information they need to be able to decide and to plan the improvement. And the good news is that after an audit, 3/4 of the plant owners take action and decide to invest on insulation and at the right place, at the right moment, and with the right thickness. Let's take two examples and very simple ones on recent audits. The first one is a small office building renovation that we have been inspecting in Vienna in 21, so last year. Very small office building, so it was only 720 meters of hot water, not very hot, 60 degrees, and not very big, only 100 millimeters diameters at maximum. But it was very damaged, and the insulation should have been repaired in many places. The inspection helps locate the uninsulated or badly insulated areas. And then what did we get as a result? A potential saving in total of 50 kilowatts power, 430 megawatt hour of energy, which means 40,000 euros in saving, or 51 tons of CO2 every year. And the return on investments of all these improvements was between 2 and 3 years, depending on the areas. So you see that it's only a small office building, but still we could get good results in regard to the size of the building. Second example, in the industry this time, mortar plant in Italy, inspected a few months ago. Then the process temperatures are not very high, 85 to 95 degrees. But there was large uninsulated equipments, and focusing only on one big equipment, we could find 23 kilo euros of potential saving, which means 210 megawatt hours of energy and 81 tons of CO2. And then the return on investment was very, very fast, below 8 months. So again, small audits. Of course, we have bigger audits, but I don't want to go again too much into details. You can get the same results in terms of return on investment and very fast payback period for the big audits. So let's summarize before we jump into questions, and I think we are on time. TIPCHECK audits are a standardized methodology executed by trained TIPCHECK engineers certified by the EiiF. It's pretty much affordable because when we perform a TIPCHECK audit, we find very fast return on investments. The plant owners get clear and precise deliverables to support the decision process. It is compliant with the energy management systems like ISO 50001 and the Energy Efficiency Directive. And most of all, it's socially and environmentally responsible with important reductions in CO2 emissions. So to conclude, I think actually every plant owner in the most energy consuming industry should ask for a TIPCHECK audit in order to tackle climate change challenges. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Romain. Great overview, examples. So thanks for that. The first question already came in, and for anyone in the audience, if you have a question, you can type the question in the Q&A box on the left-hand side. So let's start with the first question. What is your remuneration model for the TIPCHECK audits? Is it a fixed fee? Is it an hourly rate? Or is it a percentage of the savings? Can you say a bit about that, Romain?
Yeah, it depends pretty much on who will perform the audit. I know that in Knauf Insulation, we have a specific model based on fixed fee. But I don't know, I cannot tell a figure, but ask me directly, because I know that we have in the audience some of our competitors, and I don't want to talk too much about prices now, but of course I will do an estimation directly if people ask us. But yeah, we work with a basic fee, fixed based on the size of the audit and the time that we evaluate we will spend on it.
Yeah, and in this case, the person that asked the question was the former energy manager of one of the largest refineries in the world. So I'm sure he will be very interested in
Absolutely
in exploring this further with you. Actually, another question. So how much time do you need to complete an audit, roughly, typically?
A small audit will last for 1 day. The first size, we need 1 day. not including the preparation time, but 1 day on site, and then it will be between 3 and 5 days in calculation, preparation, writing of the reports in order to provide clear and precise deliverable reports, and so that the plant owners can decide and plan the improvements in the insulation systems.
Yeah, excellent. And actually, can you guarantee the savings, or do you guarantee the savings?
That's a very good question. It's very difficult to guarantee the savings, but we can, based on experience, say that in most cases the savings are above what we expect. But we can calculate very precisely based on the measures of the temperatures and the pictures of the temperature, the thermal pictures that we take on site. We know where are the losses, and we can assess and calculate very precisely based on the thermal calculation standards like ISO 12241.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, but we never had a bad surprise on this.
Okay, excellent. Hey, and another question. So a concern to many facility owners is corrosion under insulation. Do you work together with providers of CUI solutions to address that concern?
Not on a regular basis, but yes, this question arises pretty much often, and we can have when we partner with an installer, generally we are able together to provide good solutions. But corrosion and insulation is a very complex problem that is based on systems. Insulation is just a part of the system. I mean, the quality of the installation, the quality of the cladding, the quality of the paint are into this complex issue.
Okay, yeah, thanks. Can you also say a bit about your main target countries at the moment, or where are you active at the moment? Which countries?
As Knauf Insulation teams are active all around Europe. I mean, Germany, of course, France, UK, Netherlands, Belgium, Italy, Spain, Central Europe countries are the main focus of our organization. But so that's only for Knauf Insulation. But you can find TIPCHECK engineers all around the world, and just maybe if one of the people in the audience have a specific country where they want to address an audit, then we can see how we can work together.
Yeah, and I can actually well imagine also thinking about some activities ongoing here in the Netherlands, for example. There's a project called Project 625. Not sure whether you know that, but that's an ambition to realize 6 million tons of CO2 savings a year by 2025 as a result of energy efficiency measures. And I think there could be a very clear link between the objectives of that project, which is supported by the government and by some of the large associations, and what you're doing here. So that's one of the actions I will take following this webinar. If there's no link yet, to introduce you to the project leads there. I'm not sure whether they're in the audience, and if so, perhaps you can build on this, but otherwise I would introduce you.
Very ambitious plan.
It's ambitious as a result of a combination of things, but I think what you do here and also the examples you showed, there's a very interesting link with what they do. And I can imagine that similar objectives exist in other countries as well.
Yeah. And
so
what is very interesting on TIPCHECK audit is that, it has been developed for the industry, but it can be used in office buildings too, and residential, big residential projects can use TIPCHECK audits too.
Yeah, Excellent. Actually, we're here in this building built in the 17th century, so perhaps we should do a TIPCHECK audit as well.
Absolutely.
Because, yeah. There's another question. How does one become a TIPCHECK engineer?
Basically, I will invite you to go to the EiiF website, where you can you can just key in your need, find the dates of the next trainings, and then it's a full week training, generally in German or in English, and every engineer or every people with a good insulation business experience can become a TIPCHECK engineer following this training.
Yeah, excellent. I see a few questions in the list that I think have been addressed sufficiently already. If anyone else in the audience has a question, please ask. And let's give it a few more seconds. And if not, the recording will be available. There are also solutions of Knauf Insulation on the platform, technologycatalog.com. So that's also something that we would recommend the attendees to have a look at. And so solutions is part of the large database that we have of already hundreds of solutions that can help end use to improve business performance. But if there are no more questions, then suggest we close here. I think, yeah, it was very insightful, Romain. So I learned a lot myself. And I will definitely make a couple of links to people and companies that would be in need for this solution. And it's something that certainly with today's energy prices are relevant. Actually, the ROIs that you indicated, are those based on today's energy prices, or are they based on former ones?
Yeah, that's a very good question too. It was based on last year prices, actually, so it should be revised every month, as you know. So
yeah.
I did, yeah, but the return on investment is still very, very high, and it gets higher every month. So
yeah, so certainly with today's price, it's even more relevant. And
yeah.
Well, thank you very much. It was a great overview, great presentation. And thank you all for listening today, for asking the questions. And the recording will be made available soon. We have another webinar next week. Quite a different technology, but still very interesting. Likely in different target audience, but no doubt there will also be people in the audience that would also be interested in listening into that one. It's about a technology for to optimize EOR, and hope to see you there. And for now, for all of you, great rest of the day or a great evening wherever you are. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Have a great day. Bye.